Who will you be supporting?
Well, I think the first thing to ask is what are the qualities that we need? Obviously, the big issue is Brexit, and I think we need candidates who will address this issue with clarity, not base their approach on wishful thinking, recognise the hard realities. I think we need candidates who can communicate, who can beat Jeremy Corbyn and can unite the country. I think there are a number of good candidates. I've sat around the cabinet table. I've heard Michael Gove, very impressive around the cabinet table in setting out the issues. I think Matt Hancock is running an excellent pro-business campaign, but I'm going to support Rory Stewart. I think I've worked very closely with Rory in terms of the Ministry of Justice. I've seen his ability to be both strategic and on top of the details as a minister. He's an excellent communicator. I think he has got an ability to connect with people. I think he's got an ability to bring people together in order to find a way through the Brexit impasse.
Does he have
and I think he can win a general election.
I was going to say, does he have the ability to be elected leader of the Conservative Party? I mean, on the numbers, it doesn't look like it.
Well, clearly Rory is an underdog, and in some respects he's not a conventional politician and not a conventional candidate. But I think there's some real strengths in that, and my view is I want to vote for the candidate who I think is best placed to meet the tests that I've set out, and I think Rory does that. I think, as I say, there's some very good other candidates as well, so it's a difficult choice for someone in my perspective, but having worked closely with Rory, he is a serious figure, very, very thoughtful, articulate, I think has got an ability to connect with the public and connect with the people that we need to bring over to ensure that we can break this impasse, and I think he'd be a very good Prime Minister.
So what is his solution to the Brexit problem then that you find so attractive?
Well, I think that the first thing to say is that Rory recognises the choices that are available and some of the consequences of those choices, and I think that is an important starting point. Look, he's talked about how we can make use of citizens' assemblies to try to break that through, but I think it's essentially the qualities that he brings in terms of an ability to communicate, bring people over, I think working with all sides of the House of Commons, and indeed I think he would be respected within the European Union and therefore able to make, I think, more progress than others might be able to do. So I think he's a strong candidate, but as I say, there are some other very strong candidates there as well.
I have seen words from you in the past warning the Conservative Party about a shift towards populism.
Yes.
Rory Stewart clearly doesn't fall into that category. Who does?
Well, look, I'm not going to be here to be critical of any of the candidates, I'm sure you would, but you'll understand that I'm not going to. And also, we're at a very early stage in this campaign. But the point that I was warning against is that if we seek to narrow our support essentially to a hard Brexit position, that we no longer seek to be a broad church, that we go down a particular approach that I think would mean we would struggle to win the support of pro-business voters, of perhaps younger voters, more liberal voters who voted for us, particularly in 2015, and in large parts of the country, whether it be London or Scotland or parts of the home counties, the Conservative Party, which has traditionally been very strong, would not have the reach, would not have the appeal that we have had in the past.
But when you say populist, don't you actually mean popular? I mean, Boris Johnson, of course, is far, far more popular with grassroots, rank-and-file Conservatives, well, than anyone else that's running for the leadership.
Well, I think what I would say in terms of the popularity of any candidate is that I think we shouldn't just look at a snapshot of where we are today, but look forward over a period of time. Now, if we box ourselves in to saying that we should leave the European Union without a deal on the 31st of October, I have a concern that either we will do that and find that there's significant economic disruption and the government would be, I think, very unpopular as a consequence, or alternatively we end up, if you like, letting down the public because for one reason or another that doesn't happen, and that would undermine trust in those politicians who made big promises that in fact we would leave without a deal by the 31st of October. So I think you have to look forward a few months and see where we might be in the autumn. And I worry that if we go down a trajectory which is all about leaving without a deal, that we find ourselves in that very difficult situation.
In those circumstances, I mean, we've talked about this on a few occasions in the past and you haven't been drawn, but would you be able to serve in the cabinet of someone who was advocating no deal as a serious option?
I wouldn't be able to serve in a cabinet that was, if you like, had as its objective leaving without a deal. I don't think you can completely take it off the table because the European Union might refuse any kind of an extension and we might find ourselves in that situation. So I accept that we should prepare for it, but if it is an objective and saying, no deal is the right answer, I wouldn't support that policy and I wouldn't be able to serve in a cabinet that pursued that policy.
Would you, as with Philip Hammond, who suggested the same, would you in those circumstances see yourself participating in a vote of no confidence in the leader?
No, I wouldn't be voting in a no confidence motion in the House of Commons in a way that was going to lead to a Jeremy Corbyn government. I don't think that is the right approach. But I do think there is a point about saying whether the House of Commons would support a strategy which is in favour of no deal. And I think there's a question as to whether it would, and with John Bercow as Speaker, whether there would be a means of frustrating it. So which is why I think rather than focusing on no deal as perhaps some might want to do, we should try to focus on how we can try to break the impasse. And I think there are a number of candidates who are doing that, and I think that is sensible.
Interesting, though, that you haven't been swayed by Michael Gove showing a little bit of ankle in suggesting that he would be prepared to delay Brexit for a year in order to get a deal done.
Well, I have a very high opinion of Michael, and anyone who has sat around the cabinet table in recent months and heard the way in which he has addressed these issues with great honesty and great clarity. He obviously comes to it from the perspective of having led the Vote Leave campaign, so he is a committed Brexiteer. So I'm very impressed by Michael, but as I say, Rory Stewart will have my vote in the first round.
Whilst we have you, Donald Trump coming to the United Kingdom next week, why did it need to be a state visit?
Well, look, I think it's important that we have a good relationship with the United States. They're our most important security ally. Donald Trump as president, we don't all have to agree with everything he says or does, the style or the substance, but it is important that we have a good relationship with the President of the United States. If we have a state visit, if that helps cement that good relationship, it's very important for us, it seems to me, to ensure that the United States is properly committed to NATO, for example, and if that depends to a large extent on the nature of our relationship with the US and a state visit helps with that relationship with the US, then I think that's what we should do.
It seems to me that you're suggesting that our kind of diplomatic efforts with the United States are based on the idea that Donald Trump might be swayed by dinner at the Queen's house.
Well, what I'm saying is that if an event such as this helps strengthen the United Kingdom's relationship with the United States, then that is something that we should do. And it's not unprecedented to have a state visit. So I think that's no bad thing to do.
I just want to ask you one last question before we go on Brexit. I mean, is it possible for anyone who at least has as an option no deal? Is it possible for them to unite the Conservative Party?
Well, I don't want to draw red lines on this. Sometimes perhaps too many red lines get drawn. There are a lot of candidates, I think, who want to unite the Conservative Party. But I think it's really important that we are practical and pragmatic. And I do worry that there are some who say, let's just bring this all to an end, and no deal will bring it to an end. No deal doesn't bring it to an end. It just means we then have to sort out the next stages. But having left the European Union in really quite difficult circumstances, I don't think that's the right choice for the country.